I never thought I'd end up as the winter caretaker of an old hotel. But when my writing career stalled and I lost my job, I had to do something. The Overlook Hotel seemed like a great opportunity, a way to start fresh. So I packed up my family and moved us out to the remote mountains of Colorado. The Overlook was massive, isolated, and oddly beautiful. The first few days were uneventful. My wife Wendy tried to make the place feel like home, and our son Danny explored the hallways with a mix of excitement and caution. But as the days passed, I started to feel uneasy. The hotel had a strange atmosphere, like it was watching us. Danny, who had always been sensitive to things, started talking to his imaginary friend, Tony, more frequently. Tony told him things that seemed far too real to be just a child's imagination. One evening, Danny came to me with a pale face. "Daddy, Tony says we should stay away from room 237, he whispered. I laughed it off, but the next day, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door to room 237, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. The room was filled with old, decaying furniture, and there was a strange, musty smell. It felt wrong, like something terrible had happened there. The nightmares started soon after. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, and see shadows moving in the corners of my vision. Wendy noticed the change in me and begged me to leave, but I felt the hotel pulling me back, whispering dark promises of success and power. One night, I found myself at the typewriter, typing the same phrase over and over. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Pages and pages of it. Wendy found me there, surrounded by the sheets of paper, and her fear was palpable. "We have to leave, Jack," she said, her voice trembling, but the Overlook had its hooks in me. It showed me visions of grandeur, of what I could become if I stayed. The final straw came when I started hearing voices. They whispered in the dead of night, urging me to do things I would never normally consider. I backed away from the edge of madness, realizing that I was losing my grip on reality. I stumbled into the kitchen and found a knife in my hand. The hotel's whispers grew louder, urging me to do the unthinkable. But when I saw my reflection in a mirror, I saw a madman. I dropped the knife and ran to Wendy and Danny. "We have to go now," I said. And for once, Wendy didn't argue. We fled into the snow, the hotel's dark whispers fading as we got further away. We made it to the snowcat and drove down the mountain, leaving the Overlook and its horrors behind. As we drove away, I glanced back at the looming building, now just a shadow in the distance. We had escaped, but I knew we'd never be completely free of its influence. The Overlook had left its mark on us, but we had survived. We moved back to the city, trying to rebuild our lives. The experience at the Overlook left deep scars, but we were determined to heal. I went to therapy, trying to understand the hold that place had on me. Wendy and Danny found solace in a new routine, surrounded by friends and family. Years later, the nightmares still haunt me. The memories of the Overlook, of the terror we faced, are burned into my mind. But we survived. We fought back against the darkness and won, if only for a time. And as I sit here, writing about our ordeal, I hope that sharing our story will help others recognize the signs and escape before it's too late. Growing up in Derry, Maine was an experience I wouldn't wish on anyone. The town had a darkness to it, a feeling that something was always lurking just out of sight. I didn't fully understand it until the summer of '89, when my friends and I faced the unimaginable. It started with a series of disappearances. Kids went missing, and the adults seemed oddly unconcerned. My friends and I, Bill, Bev, Richie, Eddie, Stan, Mike, and Ben, formed a tight-knit group. We called ourselves the Losers Club. We stuck together because we all felt like outsiders in one way or another. One summer day, we decided to explore the old, abandoned house on Nebo Street. The house had a reputation for being haunted, and we thought it would be fun to see if the rumors were true. As we crept through the decaying rooms, we found strange symbols and signs of rituals, making our imaginations run wild. Later that week, we saw a man in a clown costume hanging around town. At first, we thought it was just someone trying to scare kids, but he seemed to always be where the disappearances happened. His eyes were cold, and his smile never reached them. We nicknamed him Pennywise. One day, while walking home from the park, I saw Pennywise standing near a storm drain. He beckoned me over, but something in his eyes froze me in place. I ran home and told my friends. We were terrified but determined to figure out what was going on. We started noticing patterns, places he appeared, times he was seen. The more we investigated, the more it felt like the adults were turning a blind eye. It was as if they were deliberately ignoring the danger. We felt alone, but we had each other. Our fear reached a peak when Bev went missing. We searched everywhere and finally found her at the Nebo house, tied up and unconscious. Pennywise was there, and he wasn't just a man in a costume. He was something far more sinister, something that thrived on our fear. We'd fought back with everything we had, sticks, rocks, anything we could find. We managed to injure him, and he fled into the depths of the house. We rescued Beth and made a pact to keep our secret and protect each other. Years later, the memories of that summer still haunt me. I see Pennywise in my nightmares, his cold eyes and sinister smile etched into my mind. We never saw him again after that day, but the fear remains. The town of Derry still feels wrong, and I can't shake the feeling that Pennywise is still out there waiting. We survived that summer, but we were changed forever. We learned the hard way that sometimes the monsters are real, and the only way to fight them is to face your fears head on. When we moved to the small town of Ludlow, Maine, I thought it would be the perfect place to raise a family. Our new house was beautiful, with a large backyard that stretched into the woods. My wife, Rachel, and our 2 kids, Ellie and Gage, settled in quickly. We even had our beloved cat, Winston, to complete our family. Behind our house, there was a path that led to a strange little cemetery. The sign read Pet Sematary, spelled out in crude letters. The locals told us it was where children buried their pets. It was a sad, but seemingly harmless, place. One day, our neighbor, Judd Crandall, told me about another burial ground, deeper in the woods. "Sometimes dead is better," he said cryptically. I didn't understand what he meant until tragedy struck. Winston was always an adventurous cat. He loved to explore the outdoors, but one day he wandered too close to the road and was hit by a truck. The grief was unbearable. Winston had been with us for years, and I couldn't accept that he was gone. That's when Judd told me about the burial ground beyond the Pet Sematary, a place where things buried there didn't stay dead. Desperate and not thinking clearly, I took Winston's body to that ancient burial ground. I buried him there, hoping against hope that he'd come back to us. And he did, but not in the way I had imagined. Winston returned, but he was different. There was a darkness in him, something malevolent. He was no longer our sweet, affectionate cat. He was something else, something evil. The burial ground had twisted him, brought him back wrong. Things quickly spiraled out of control. Winston's behavior became increasingly aggressive, and I realized too late the terrible mistake I had made. The ground beyond the Pet Sematary had a power, a dark and terrible power that should never be tampered with. Winston started attacking us, hissing and scratching with a ferocity I had never seen before. I knew we couldn't keep him, but getting rid of him wasn't easy. One night, Winston cornered Ellie in her room. She screamed, and I rushed in to find him ready to pounce. I grabbed him, and he bit down hard on my hand, drawing blood. With a heavy heart, I realized what I had to do. I took Winston back to the burial ground, intending to put him down and end the nightmare. But the malevolent force in that place seemed to resist, making the task almost impossible. Eventually, I managed to end Winston's suffering, but the act left me shaken and filled with dread. We left Ludlow after that, leaving behind the house, the Pet Sematary, and the terrible memories. But the guilt and the grief followed me. I had tampered with forces beyond my understanding, and I paid the price. As the years pass, the pain dulls but never truly goes away. I learned a harsh lesson. Some things are better left undisturbed, and sometimes dead is indeed better.